Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third Financial Planning Week Facebook and YouTube live presentation. And thank you for everyone joining us today on the Financial Planning Standards Board World Financial Planning Day. Today, we've got a great guest coming on. But before we get to that, just to remind everyone to please follow us on YouTube and hit the subscribe and notification button so you can get all our content coming through, as well as visit our website, www.letsplan.co.za, for more information and more financial education tips. But today is not about me. Today is about Jean. So Jean, welcome to this, and good to have you on board today.
Thank you for having me. I'm pretty excited about Financial Planning Week, so I'm hoping that it's going to be a lot of value out of the session today.
Brilliant. So just a little bit more about Jean. She is an author, speaker, and certified financial planner and workplace coach with over 20 years worth of experience. So we're definitely getting the experience. She's passionate about improving financial outcomes for all using various approaches, tools, formats, and specifically focusing on bringing together the technical aspects of managing money and the emotional relationship to it. And that's a vitally important bit. She's the founder of Money Messages, a financial education and wellness program that provides solutions for employees and their families. Her mission is to help raise money-smart households through her digital learning solutions, group workshops, and individual coaching. So Jean, again, thank you for coming and sharing your knowledge today. A wealth of experience, and really looking forward to this presentation. So I'm going to bring your slides up for you on that. And there you go. And I'm going to take myself out and over to you.
Thank you, David. Yeah, so, I think this is a very pertinent topic to a lot of people, especially, in this current situations that we're finding ourselves in. We know interest rates have been increased. We know that inflation has gone up. Petrol prices have increased as well. And, it's almost the end of the year. So we're coming up to December and Christmas and the new year starting off. And again, I think it's extremely important that we help people out there to manage their finances and be able to navigate through difficult challenges. So today we're going to explore two different approaches. And if you want, you're more than welcome to have any questions or comments that you'd like to add in the chat. We'll try and see if we can get to answer some of those. But, I want to start off with saying that we all know that prevention is better than cure. But it's not always easy or even possible to make sure that we have prevented all potential situations that would likely to lead to a difficult time or difficult financial time. So today in this session, what we're going to do is to explore two different approaches. The first one is probably the ideal solution, which is to prevent a difficult time or difficult financial time. The second approach is to help you to navigate through that difficult challenge. So I think the starting point we're going to look at is to begin with managing through or preventing a financial tough time. So this one might be a little bit easier to implement or to consider because it's more of a proactive approach. And, obviously this approach will help you to identify potentially difficult challenges or scenarios that might occur in the future. And I think the challenge for you is going to be implementing what you're required to do, because not always is that possible, especially, all at once. So one tool that we can use to help prevent a disaster from occurring or a financial difficult time from occurring is to use scenario planning. Now, scenario planning is very commonly used within businesses and within corporates, and they use this specific tool to identify potential negative or risky situations that might happen in the future, and then to find solutions or gaps in their current plans that will prevent them or stop them from actually generating a profit or conducting business. Now, again, I think, this is a great tool that people can use in their personal lives as well. And there's nothing stopping us from using a tool like this in our personal lives. And I'm going to help you to figure out how we can actually go about using scenario planning in our personal situations so that we can prevent a financial difficult time. So one very important question that you can ask yourself when completing this specific exercise, we'll get to the question just now, but the 4Ds that I refer to when I look at scenario planning with my clients from a financial planning perspective is around death, disability, decumulation, and divorce. Now, each of these four scenarios or each of these Ds can have a negative impact on your financial situation. And it could lead to a financial crisis if you do not have a plan in place to mitigate the risk that comes with one of these Ds. So what we want to do is I'm going to explain each of the Ds in a little bit more detail. And then the next step is we'll choose one of those Ds and we'll look at how we can unpack it a little bit further so that you can use that in your planning. So obviously when we plan for death, and this is something that obviously a lot of people don't like to talk about, to think about, but when you plan for death, you need to consider not only the death of yourself, but if you're married, also the death of your spouse, or even if you're a parent, the death of the other parent. So regardless of whether you are the breadwinner in your family or you could be a stay-at-home mom or dad, your death is bound to have some sort of financial implication on your dependents, okay? Especially if they are your financial dependents. So let's take an example. If you have a spouse that stays at home to take care of the children, now your spouse might not necessarily be contributing financially to the household, but their absence will mean that, somebody else will need to fulfill those duties, like taking care of the children, picking them up from school, managing the household. And so, especially if you, as the other spouse or the other parent, is not able to do so, there is going to be a financial implication attached to it. So death, when we're looking at planning for death, you do need to take into account who the people are in your household that contribute from a financial perspective. The other D is disability. And, if you look at disability or illness, that will result in the loss of some sort of income if you are not able to work. So many clients are under the impression that they have sufficient cover to pay for things like medical illness or medical expenses through their medical aid or their hospital plans. But I know a lot of people that had a fully comprehensive medical aid, but their oncology benefits were depleted when they contracted cancer. So these are important questions that you need to ask yourself when it comes to disability or illness. And one of the questions is, do you have sufficient funds to be able to pay for medical expenses if you exhaust your medical benefits? So, and another question you need to ask yourself is, what are the options available to you? What if you no longer have any sick leave left? Because remember, a lot of people only have 36 days, I think it's 36 days sick leave for every 3-year cycle. So, if you contract an illness, a severely ill, a terminal illness or a serious illness, you may deplete your sick leave. And then what happens after that? So these are some important considerations to think about when it comes to financial aspects. The third D is decumulation. Now, this is an event that is likely to occur that requires you to either get rid of some of your income or draw from your income or to deplete your assets. So selling your assets in order to be able to continue funding your expenses. And obviously these things are things like retrenchment. It could also be retirement that would allow you to actually withdraw some of your income. And then there is the last D, which is divorce. Now, not only would you be separating from a spouse, but it also means that you are now going to start separating your financial responsibilities, and your financial goals will also be separated. So, I've created a workbook that will help you to unpack each of these Ds in a little bit more detail And I will share information on how you can access that workbook. But for now, what I'd like to do is to look at how do we unpack one of the Ds in this specific situation. And this is the question that I'd like you to pose in each of these specific scenarios. If any of these events were to happen to you right now, what will it mean for you and your family from a financial perspective? So it's a difficult question to answer. It's a difficult question to think about. But again, if you want to be fully prepared for or prevent a financial situation or difficult time from happening, then these are important questions that you need to ask. Now, I know it's not always easy to prevent something like this, but you can reduce and mitigate the risk that could potentially arise. I mean, we can't all prevent death, but you can prepare for it financially. And I think that is the ultimate goal that we'd like you to have in place going forward. So let's unpack death as a potential scenario. So again, these are important questions that you need to start thinking about. And I know they are awkward and difficult questions, but if COVID taught us anything, it's that life is unpredictable and life is unfair. And we know that those businesses and those people that managed to survive and navigate through COVID were those that had some sort of plan in place to actually mitigate some of those risks. So some of the questions that you can ask yourself is, do you have life cover in place? And if so, is it adequate? And how do you know it's adequate? Because a lot of people think, okay, I've got this amount of lump sum life cover that's going to be paid out to my beneficiaries, so they're okay, they're going to be taken care of. But how do you actually know that that is sufficient to take care of your family's needs and cover their expenses? Another question that you can ask yourself is, what are your family's expenses that will need to be covered or that will be likely to continue after your death? And how much income will they actually require in order to be able to continue to survive and maintain their current lifestyle? Now, remember, if either of the parents are passing away, it's bound to cause emotional distress. The last thing you want is to have your family panicking and worrying about how the financial affairs are going to take place. You want to reduce any lifestyle changes that they need to undergo as much as possible. And if I think about a situation like, if you are the primary breadwinner and you are responsible for the financial payments of your home loan, and there's no cover in place to actually pay for your home, what's going to happen to your family? Will they have to move out of their home, and where will they go and live? So those are important things to think about that, will help you to put plans in place to mitigate that. Another question that you could ask yourself is, what's going to happen to your assets? Have you nominated beneficiaries that will actually benefit from those assets? Are there any fees, or what are the fees actually? I think there are fees that's attached or associated with death, but a question that you can ask yourself is, what are those potential fees or costs that are related to your death? What types of taxes are going to be payable, especially if you have a large estate that needs to be wound up? Also, were there any medical expenses that might potentially be incurred as a result of your death that might not be covered by things like your medical aid or potential or existing life cover policies that you might have in place? And I think this question is something that most people do seem to cover, but through their funeral policies. But a question you could ask yourself here is, will your beneficiaries have sufficient liquid cash available to pay for funeral expenses? Now, again, remember, and again, depending on your religious beliefs, you may need to be, your funeral might need to take place immediately. It might need to take place in a day or 2 days' time. And again, depending on what those religious beliefs are, there may be certain rituals that need to be performed, and those rituals will come with specific fees or incur specific fees. Another question that you could ask yourself is there anything else that you need to do or have in place to reduce or remove the emotional or financial distress that your family and your loved ones, specifically your spouse and your children, will have to go through upon your death. And that's things like making sure that you have a finalized will in place, that you've confirmed how you wish to be buried, that you've nominated guardians to take care of your younger or minor children. Another question that you need to ask is, who must your family contact in the event of your death? Who's that first point of contact that they need to inform? Is it your financial planner? Is it your bank? Do you have an executor that's going to be winding up your estate? And does your family have access to financial records? So, if something's going to happen to you, who's the first point of contact, but also how do they start getting a hold of all your financial records? I know of someone who actually emails latest policy documents or list of policy documents to their beneficiaries. So at least, they've got information via email. So obviously just make sure from a cybersecurity perspective that you've protected your documents so that not everybody can access that. And one thing that a lot of people don't think about also is social media accounts. When you pass away, no one's closing up your Facebook and your LinkedIn accounts. So those are also important things that you might need to look at including. So again, the answers to these questions is going to be very awkward and difficult questions. Maybe not awkward, but difficult and uncomfortable questions to ask. And one of the things you might need to do is to sit down with your family and discuss the implications of your death upfront. Now, remember, death is only one of the things that we looked at exploring, but you need to do this for all four of those potentially negative situations that might bring up or might pose a financial tough time. Make sure you have an updated will in place and you've discussed your burial wishes with your family. And again, as I said, I think these are not nice conversations to have, but I assure you, if you have them now, they will provide a lot of clarity for your family, for your loved ones, later on when you are no longer around to have these difficult conversations. So take care of your financial implications of your death before it happens. It will reduce the burden on your family, and I promise you, it will give them the time that they need to heal and focus on those things, on losing you, as opposed to worrying about the financial implications of it. So our second approach is when you are posed with a difficult or financial difficulty, and I think a lot of us are going to have to obviously go through this. Even if you don't have a plan, you still need to navigate through it. Or even if you do have a plan, you still need to navigate through it. This is a more reactive approach. And, managing or navigating through a financial tough time is something that's going to happen, whether you've got that plan in place or not, whether you're prepared for it or not. But I think even though we know that prevention is better than cure, and having some sort of plan in place to mitigate those risks might be better than not having one, the challenge that you're going to have in this approach is to manage your emotions and to implement your plan. Now, again, even if you don't have a plan, the extra challenge is going to be for you is to manage your emotions and at the same time figure out how you are going to navigate financially through that difficult time. So I think, the 4 Ds, again, is still very relevant because each of those Ds can present a difficult time. And I think this is the challenge for all of us in this specific, when presented with a negative or difficult financial time. The difficulty here is that no amount of preparation can help prepare us for the emotions that will present itself through a difficult time. This is something that you're going to have to learn to navigate through and manage your emotions. So no amount of preparation is going to actually prepare you for this. But one of the questions you can ask yourself is, what do you need to do to navigate through this difficult time? And again, if I look at COVID taught us that life is unpredictable. No one could have had the foresight to see something like COVID happen and the emotional distress and stress that it brought about. And so whilst nobody could have prepared us for something like that, it did teach us a huge lesson, and that we are resilient and that we can overcome a lot of unforeseen circumstances if we are put in a position where we have to. So here, I'd like to share with you the 4 Ps, which can help you to navigate through an emotional difficulty. Now, I know when we presented with an emotional difficulty, a lot of our thought processes, our logic go out the window because we obviously overcome the emotion. But if you can try and focus on remembering these 4 Ps, and that's to pause, to ponder, to plan, and to process. So we're going to deal with the first P, which is to pause. Now, an unforeseen or unplanned event can cause emotional distress, and it can be quite devastating. No matter how prepared, as I said, you might be financially for a disaster, nothing can emotionally prepare you for something like this. So pausing is a great way to acknowledge how you feel, what you're going through, to try and make sense of what's happening, and to just breathe. You might need to take some time out to grieve. There's no urgency, and I think that's very, very important to make sure that you take that time out to grieve and to just breathe. And that will give you time to not react. It'll give you time to think about what your next steps need to be. So let's use a practical example in this approach. Let's say that you heard your company is about to downsize and your job might be affected. Now, again, I know, if you've been working for a company for many years, it's likely to throw a spanner in the works. A lot of emotions will run through you. But a positive mindset is absolutely critical in terms of how you effectively manage the way forward. So again, take some time out, pause, try not to panic, and try not to listen to the noise around you, because sometimes, listening to negativity can also get us down. So if your job is impacted, make sure that you get all the facts first before you respond or react. And again, it's important to reflect, to breathe, and to not react, so that you can focus on what those next steps are going to be with a clear mind. Remind yourself that things are going to be okay. Again, use COVID as an example. A lot of us went through a difficult time, some more so than others, but you did overcome it, and you will overcome any other negative situation that you are presented with. Another thing that I use in my coaching conversations with my clients is I tell them to start using affirmations. So, if you're feeling negative and you're feeling despondent, use a positive affirmation that's going to help you to focus on getting out of your situation. And repeat this to yourself as often as you can, and I promise you it works. The next P is to ponder. Pondering is going to help you to pause again and to think about what needs to be done. And if you're finding it difficult to do this, then an option is to also bring in support. So rely on the support and guidance of others in your circle, in your family, that you can rely on. It's okay to ask for help from loved ones during difficult times. And I think that's what family and friends are there for, is to help you to make sense of what's going on around you. So in this step, you want to grab a notebook or journal, and you want to start jotting down the things that you need to do. I think writing it down is extremely important, because it gives you a plan that you can start working towards. You want to, in our example that we used of losing your job or potentially losing your job, you want to identify what your current resources are and what the potential gaps will be. Now, this is obviously going to be dependent on exactly what the situation or event that happens that's going to give you or present a difficult financial time, but everything can have a plan and be planned for. So with our retrenchment example, what you want to do is you want to find out what the facts are from the relevant resources, like your line manager or your HR department. You don't want to be speaking to colleagues that have no clue or are not familiar with what exactly is going on. So speak to the relevant resources. You also want to consider options or alternative solutions. You want to use time to start mapping out any ideas that's going to help you to move forward. And I think, again, another important thing is to focus on solutions and not get bogged down by worry and negativity, because that can actually take away from the actual solution. Focus on the things that you can control, not the things that is out of your control. The third P is to start planning. And once you have a list of all the information that you're going to need, The next step is to actually put a plan in place that's going to outline the actions that you need to take. Again, focus on what you need to do, as that's going to help you to move forward. Okay. With our retrenchment example, you can start planning the details. So maybe identify a potential timeline or of events that's going to start to unfold. If it's a whole lot of people that's getting retrenched, obviously there's a process that needs to be followed, a legal process that needs to be followed by your employers. So again, find out what those events are and what the timelines that those events need to happen, because that's going to help you to determine how much time you actually need to get your plan in place and your financial house in order. You might want to look at expenses that need to be reduced in the time that's your job might be affected. You might need to drop a budget or have some sort of assets and liabilities statement in place so that you know what cash flow is likely to be affected. You want to know how much income you're going to have available to you if you do get retrenched, and what expenses do you have that could potentially be reduced until you find an alternative income. This is going to give you an idea of how much time you have available before you start to run out of money. Other actions that you can include in your plan is to think about, are you able to start a side hustle? Are you able to update your CV? Or what do you need to do to update your CV? Do you start applying for positions? Do you need to reach out to your networks? Do you need to update your LinkedIn profile? Whatever these are, start to put down the actions that you need to take and timelines. So by when do you need to have all of these things in place? The last step is to proceed. And I think, again, here, we don't want you to get too comfortable and wait until you find out that you've been retrenched. Use this opportunity to get your financial house in order. We all make excuses. We don't have time. We don't have the skills. We don't have the resources. Use this specific time to actually start getting your financial house in order. And don't get despondent. I think this is also very important. Your mindset is going to be absolutely critical to help you to stay positive. And you want to be able to use that positivity to manage your finances and do what is in your control. Focus on the outcome that you wish to achieve and let that motivate you. I know it's not easy. It's difficult to manage your emotions through that, but only you have the power to change your story, and only you have the power to make those decisions. And by you not taking control or progressing towards your goal, you are actually giving your power away. If you don't get to where you need to be by the time frame that you set for yourself, don't be harsh on yourself. I think it's important to also take things one day at a time and not be overwhelmed by the mountain that might be ahead of you. I assure you, if you have a plan in place, it does make things easier. So if you want, as I said, I do have a free a workbook that I can email to you that will help you to unpack the 4 Ds. It gives you all the questions that you can pose to yourself and your family that will help you to identify the gaps in your plan. And then obviously, ideally, you want to be speaking to a financial advisor or financial planner who will be able to help you to put that plan in place. If you want, you can scan this QR code, or you can also send out an email to info@moneymessages.co.za. You're more than welcome to also connect with my financial education and wellness program, Money Messages. I've shared 3 different QR codes. I share a lot of information and resources on my Facebook page as well as on my business LinkedIn page. I also have a YouTube channel that you are able to, view any other videos that I also share that will help you to shift the way you think, feel, and behave with money. I hope that you found value in this session. I'm not sure if there are any questions or comments, but David, you're more than welcome to rejoin me. Oh, you're on mute.
3 years later, do you think you'd sort that out? Thank you so much for sharing your insights today. I think what I got out of that, obviously, it's always better to have a plan in place before an event happens. But you shared a very nice journey to say that if you didn't have a plan in place and you're reacting to it, there is a way to do it. And I think quite importantly, a lot of these events are very emotional events. And the first step is probably working through those emotions and then approaching it with logic instead of a knee-jerk reaction. So again, fantastic. And I do hope people take advantage of that free workbook that you are offering. And thank you very much for that offer too. And thank you very much again for giving up your time and sharing with our viewers today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Perfect. So everyone, thank you very much for tuning in again today. Like I said, if you do follow us on Facebook, if you're following us on YouTube, subscribe, you'll get more information. But again, visit our website, www.letsplan.co.za, for more kinds of information like this. And thank you again. And we'll see you tomorrow at 12 o'clock when we talk about investing. And on Friday, we'll be talking about using a professional planner. Thank you very much.